take a deep breath. Go ahead, do it again. That air is about 80% nitrogen. It's the most common gas on our planet. And for almost all of human history, it was completely useless. We were literally surrounded by the one thing we needed to survive, and we were starving to death because we couldn't get to it. Until 100 years ago, when two men figured out how to do the impossible, how to pull food out of thin air. Their discovery saved billions of lives. It built our modern cities. It's the reason you're alive today. But it also became one of the most destructive forces in human history, fueling the deadliest wars the world had ever seen. This is the story of the single invention that feeds the world and the accidental discovery that powers both life and death. By the end of this video, you will never look at a bag of groceries or the sky itself in the same way again.
For thousands of years, farming was simple. You plant crops, they grow, you harvest them. But every time you pull a plant out of the ground, you're also pulling something else out with it. Nutrients, specifically nitrogen. And once the nitrogen is gone, the soil is useless. Nothing will grow. For centuries, farmers had a simple solution: manure. Animal waste is full of nitrogen, so you spread it on the fields and it puts the nutrients back. Problem solved. But this system had a hard mathematical limit. You could only grow enough food to feed the number of people who could be supported by the number of animals you had. By the late 1800s, the human population was exploding. We were approaching 1.5 billion people. And we were about to hit a wall. There just wasn't enough manure in the world to grow the food we needed. We were officially running out. This wasn't some distant, abstract problem. Scientists were sounding the alarm. They were predicting global, catastrophic famine. They knew the world was on a countdown to starvation, and it created a frantic, global scramble for a solution. This led to one of the strangest chapters in history, the Guano Age. Yes, guano, bird poop. Specifically, bird poop from tiny islands off the coast of South America. For millions of years, birds had been living on these islands, and their droppings, baked in the sun, created mountains of super-concentrated nitrogen-rich fertilizer. It was black gold. Countries literally went to war over these barren, smelly islands. The United States passed the Guano Islands Act, allowing it to claim any uninhabited island covered in bird droppings anywhere in the world. This wasn't a joke. This was about survival. But everyone knew this was a temporary fix. The mountains of guano were being strip-mined at an incredible rate. They would be gone in a few decades. And then what? The great irony was, the solution was everywhere. It was right in front of them. It was all around them. The air itself. That massive, untapped reservoir of nitrogen just floating there. Scientists knew that if anyone could figure out how to grab that nitrogen from the atmosphere and turn it into a solid form, they wouldn't just become rich, they would hold the future of human civilization in their hands. The pressure was on. The entire world was holding its breath, waiting for a miracle. The man who stepped up to solve the puzzle was a German chemist named Fritz Haber. Haber was obsessed with this problem. He understood the stakes. He described his challenge with a simple metaphor. Imagine the nitrogen in the air are two Lego bricks stuck tightly together. This bond is one of the strongest in nature. To be useful for plants, you need to break those two bricks apart. But how? You can't just pull them. You can't smash them. Haber's idea was to use two things: extreme heat and extreme pressure. He would take air and squeeze it. He would squeeze it harder than the deepest parts of the ocean, and he would cook it hotter than flowing lava. The theory was simple. If you put the nitrogen under enough stress, under enough pressure and heat, the bond would eventually snap. Then you could combine that single free nitrogen atom with hydrogen to create ammonia. Ammonia is the magic ingredient. It's the building block for synthetic fertilizer. For years, Haber tried and failed. He'd build small reactors, they'd explode. He'd tried different temperatures, nothing would work. The pressures were so intense that normal steel would just break down. But finally, in 1909, he had a breakthrough. He discovered a secret ingredient, a catalyst, a tiny grain of osmium, a rare metal that acted like a key. When he added it to the process, it worked. For the first time in history, a human had taken air and turned it into a trickle of liquid ammonia. He had made bread from air. But his machine was tiny. It was a tabletop proof of concept. To feed the world, he needed to make this process massive. That's where Carl Bosch came in. He was a brilliant chemical engineer, and his job was to take Haber's miracle and build a factory around it. It was one of the greatest engineering challenges ever attempted. He had to invent entirely new kinds of steel, new kinds of pumps, new kinds of reactors, just to contain the insane pressures. And finally, in 1913, he did it. The first Haber-Bosch factory roared to life. Humanity was saved. We now had a limitless supply of fertilizer. Famine was a thing of the past. But the story should have ended there. But it didn't.
Just 1 year after the first factory opened, World War I began. A global conflict unlike anything the world had ever seen. Germany was immediately cut off from its traditional suppliers of nitrates, the key ingredient for making explosives. Without gunpowder and TNT, Germany's army would run out of bullets and shells within 6 months. The war would be over. But then, the German government realized something. Ammonia, the same magic ingredient used to make fertilizer, was also the magic ingredient for making modern explosives. The brand new Haber-Bosch factory, built to save lives, was immediately converted to a weapons factory. Fritz Haber, the man who wanted to end starvation, began engineering new, horrifying chemical weapons, including chlorine gas. He personally oversaw their deployment on the battlefield. His invention, the one that was supposed to be a miracle for humanity, prolonged the war by years. It directly led to the deaths of millions of soldiers. This is the dark duality of the Haber-Bosch process. It is both the angel of life and the instrument of death. It's an invention that represents humanity's greatest genius and its darkest impulses. It gave us the power to create life on a scale we never imagined, and the power to destroy it just as easily. This isn't a personal failure of one man, it's a reflection of us. The tool itself isn't good or evil, but it gave humanity an incredible amount of power, and we immediately used it for both. So what does this 100-year-old discovery mean for you today? First, let's look at what you eat. The food system we have today is a direct result of this process. The cheap chicken, the perfect-looking vegetables, the sheer abundance of food in a grocery store. It's all built on a foundation of synthetic fertilizer.
Scientists estimate that half of the nitrogen atoms inside your body's proteins right now came from a Haber-Bosch factory. You are quite literally half synthetic. Without this process, the world's population would have maxed out at around 4 billion people. Today, we have 8 billion. So the next time you're in a crowded room, look around. 1 of every 2 people in that room is alive because of Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch. Second, look at where you live. The invention didn't just change farming, it changed everything. Because food was now abundant and cheap, huge numbers of people could leave the farms and move to cities. This fueled the rise of the modern megacity. The skyscrapers, the dense urban populations, none of it is possible without an industrial food supply chain that can feed millions of people who don't grow their own food. The world we inhabit was shaped by this one chemical reaction. Finally, we have to understand the long-term cost. The Haber-Bosch process is incredibly energy-intensive. Today, it consumes about 2% of the entire world's energy supply. Its carbon footprint is enormous, contributing massively to climate change. The runoff from all this fertilizer pollutes our rivers and oceans, creating huge dead zones where nothing can live. Soberly, summarizing the paradox, the invention that solved the crisis of the 20th century has become one of the biggest drivers of the crisis of the 21st. It's not a simple story of a hero or a villain. It's a story about a powerful tool with powerful consequences. The story of the Haber-Bosch process is the story of the modern world. It's a story of how a desperate search to feed humanity led to an invention that was both a miracle and a curse. It gave us the power to sustain billions of new lives, to build towering cities, and to create an age of unprecedented abundance. But that same power, in the wrong hands, fueled unimaginable destruction. And its long-term consequences now challenge the very future of our planet. It's a reminder that our greatest strengths often hide our greatest weaknesses, and that there is no such thing as a simple solution. This is the kind of hidden history we explore every week. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And let me know in the comments, did you know that half your body was made from a factory? Our next video is about the time a single company convinced the entire world to buy something they didn't need by inventing a tradition out of thin air. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.